He took her hand, and together they made their way through the city, out through the gate, and into the woods. It was such a beautiful spring morning. Both the tree limbs above and the ground below were littered with bright pink blossoms that felt soft beneath her feet. Autumn often walked barefoot, especially when visiting the wood, and especially in springtime. After talking casually, Andy approached the subject Autumn waited both anxiously yet reluctantly for him to bring up. "So, I told the council of our marriage plans today," he said. "Yes," she prompted him, after he was silent a little while. "They do not approve, especially my brother, Edward." He did not speak further. Autumn remained silent until she could stand it no longer. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them." He held out his hand and let one of the blossoms flutter down into his palm. Then he gently placed it within her golden hair. "That you are the one God wants me to marry." Autumn smiled as he continued. "I truly believe God wants us to be together, and nothing should stop that." "I love you, Autumn," he added tenderly. "I love you too," she said softly, and they continued their walk through the woods. Autumn gazed out her window at the setting sun. She stood in the Mira palace, where she would be staying as she and Andy made the remainder of their wedding plans and then married. Wedding plans were not the only thing pressing at her mind, though. She thought of her sister, sighing. Would summer ever see the light? Would she ever accept her and Andy's marriage? Would she ever see the Mira as equals with the scintillates? Would their peoples ever be at peace with each other ever again? She prayed about all these things, prayed deeply and sincerely from her heart. And then she thanked God for giving Andy courage to stand up to his people, to stand up for God's will and his love for her, and not to give in to the pressure and contentions that surely surrounded him. She asked that God might continue to grant her courage as well, courage to stand up to her sister. Sitting down at the desk, pen in hand, she began to write. "Dear sister, I am writing to ask you one last time if you would like to attend my wedding." The days passed swiftly as the wedding grew near. Summer did not send word to reply to Autumn's letter, but Autumn felt that she would not be coming. Finally, the day before the wedding arrived. Andy noticed how disheartened Autumn appeared the past few days, thinking about her sister. He wanted to do something to take her mind off the subject and raise her spirits. So, with a twinkle in his eye, and that huge grin of his that always made her feel better, he announced, "Miss Autumn, today I'm taking you on a picnic." Autumn replied with her shy smile, and soon they set off. He led her on his brown mare into the woods a little ways outside the vale, and then he helped her down. They walked yet a little further to a stream. There they sat, talked, ate, and relaxed. Andy prepared the nicest lunch, with heart-shaped sandwiches and cookies. He baked the cookies himself, so they were rather like chewing rocks, and the icing tasted far too salty and pasty. Autumn forced a smile, choking one down and washing it down with lots of water from the spring, the presence of which she was more grateful for than even usual. The afternoon wore on when suddenly Andy announced, "Oh, I forgot. I made brownies too. I believe I left them in the horse's saddlebag, though. I'll go get them," Autumn volunteered, jumping up. "I'll be right back." She intended to sample them and then feed them to the horse if they tasted anything like the cookies. She didn't want to hurt his feelings, but she couldn't really gag down any more such awful concoctions. She rummaged through the saddlebag, but could not locate any brownies, unless, oh dear, were they really those rock-hard oval things she felt at the bottom? As she prepared to pull out the mysterious objects, she suddenly heard a rustle in the bushes and froze, glancing around curiously. Another noise drifted to her ears as well, a sort of gasping for air. Autumn let in a short gasp, clasping a hand over her mouth as someone suddenly appeared through the bushes and dropped to his knees before her. A Mira man. Autumn recognized him as a servant in Andy's palace, yet he possessed the appearance of someone from beyond the grave. His skin blanched paler than the palest white and stretched thin over his bones. His eyes shone wide, his breath coming in short, strained, rasping breaths. A sweat covered him, which Autumn felt was not just because he'd apparently run all the way from the vale, and he shook all over. "Ill," he wheezed, barely able to draw enough breath to speak. "Plague in the vale. They're all..." With a blood-curdling rasp, he collapsed, and with horrified gaze, Autumn rushed to him and lay her ear to his chest. He was dead. For some moments, she just sat there, barely able to comprehend what she just witnessed. Suddenly, a fear gripped her, an ominous knowing, and she raced back to Andy, shouting his name desperately. He did not reply, though, and as she reached the stream, he lay motionless on the ground, pale as death. He was not dead. Indeed, he faintly called her name, but she knew she must get him and the others help as soon as possible. Finding strength to heft him onto the horse, she hopped on the horse's back behind him, spurring the steed into a mad dash back to the vale. As soon as she entered the gates of the vale, though, she brought the horse to a swift halt. Upon entering, she felt it. Death clung to the air like a foreshadowing hand just waiting to take hold of its victims. Autumn knew that their time, that Andy's time, was short indeed. Not even the slightest breeze stirred as Autumn made her way to the palace. Mira lay strewn all over the ground where they fell unconscious as the disease struck them. Autumn carried Andy to his room in the palace, laying a cold cloth on his feverish forehead and situating the soft pillows and blankets around him. She carried as many others as she could into the room as well, trying to calm their fevers and tending to them the best she could, but all to no avail. This was no ordinary plague. This was black magic, the work of her sister. This was her sister's reply to her wedding invitation. Autumn sank to her knees and sobbed. How helpless she felt. How it pained her to see them all lying there, miserable and suffering, on the brink of death, and there was nothing she could do for them. No, wait. There was something she could do. She must go see her sister. Though she loathed the thought, there must be some way she could change her sister's cruel heart. There must be some way she could spare the Mira's lives. She prepared to leave, rising to her feet with renewed hope and determination, wiping tears from her face when a voice called softly, "Autumn? Autumn?" Andy. She rushed to his side, kneeling by his bed and taking his hand in hers. "Yes, Andy, I'm right here," she said softly, forcing a smile. How it broke her heart to see him suffer so. The tears sprang once more to her eyes, but she knew she must be strong for him and blink them away. "What's going on?" he asked weakly. "I feel so tired." "You're sick, Andy," she replied quietly. "You're all sick, but I'm going to go and find a cure for you, and then I'll come right back." "And then we'll get married, right?" As soon as he asked it, a bright red flashed in her mind's eye, and with it a glimmer of ominous doubt. Yet she smiled reassuringly, saying softly, "Yes, then we'll get married." He smiled weakly and closed his eyes. After kissing his forehead, she slipped silently from the room, casting a final glance over her shoulder at his pale form. Autumn stopped as soon as she passed outside the gates. How would she ever get to Iridescence and back again in time?